Well done for making it to the beginning of the talk. We have a couple of fun activities. I'm sure we'll have more people coming through as we go. Before we start, this is what happens when you give AI a prompt that says, please give me a dog in a laboratory doing cognitive science. So this is what that looks like. I think it's quite good. He's looking at his own paw in the microscope, which is very advanced. But I think it's getting better and better, so there's that. Okay, so a little bit about me. I think you mentioned already, I started in animal advocacy, like a lot of people in this conference. July 2001 is when I went vegan and started doing kind of more activism. A few years later, more or less volunteering full-time in animal advocacy, more or less burnt out. Decided I needed to study something and improve my skills. Moved to the UK to study, stayed for the weather. That's my usual joke. Moved from the Middle East to here. It wasn't a fun experience. And started studying and couldn't really get a job in an animal charity, and so decided I'm going to work in different cause areas. I'm going to work in different charities in different areas and just learn how they do things. And so this is very much meant to be, how do other sectors do things, and what can we learn in animal advocacy from international development, from human rights, from the NHS, from other places that have usually more budget for what they're doing and kind of more scale for what they're doing. So if you were there at the plenary yesterday, I think Matthew was telling us that we all need to work harder. My point is that we need to work smarter. We're already working really hard. So there's that. And we're already making a lot of progress considering the David and Goliath nature of it. And we need to remember that David did beat Goliath, so there's that. So I'm hoping that you can go away with some really tangible things that you can go and test in your own organizations, in your own work. Most of it is digital. So after all of the, started in animal advocacy, nowadays I run an organization called Blue State. Blue State is originally an American organization. Our founder is a guy called Joe. He used to be Obama's chief digital strategist and very much designed the approach of mobilizing people to get Obama elected, and thought, well, this works in politics. What else can this movement building approach and mobilization approach do? These are some of mostly our UK clients, but as you can see, a lot of very big organizations. So hoping you can kind of take away some of the learnings of how we do things for them and how they do things in general. And overall, in terms of our scale, lots and lots of scale. So my hope with the movement is, can we get this scale for animals? Can we really think bigger and raise our funding, and then we can do a much larger scale in terms of advocacy mobilization. And so I'd love more of these numbers to be animal related in future. So our first activity today is, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. We're going to do a little test. So close your eyes, everyone. I'm going to read you a list of words, and the test is to try and remember as many of them as you can. Okay? The words are dream, bed, night, mattress, snooze, sheet, nod, tired, night, artichoke, insomnia, doze, blanket, night, alarm, nap, snore, and pillow. You can open your eyes. We're not going to write it down because we don't have time, but could anybody tell me a word that you remember? Artichoke, great. Artichoke is great. Anything else? Dream. Yeah? Okay, so everybody's getting this down. Dream and pillow? Dream and pillow were first and last. And people tend to remember the first thing you said and the last thing you said very well, not so much the middle. Artichoke, everyone remember artichoke? It's novelty. It's different from the rest of the list, and so your brain goes like, oh, artichoke, what's that about? Night was in there 3 times, so repetition is helpful for your brain to process stuff. Anyone had sleep? Yeah? Sleep is not in the word list. Sleep is the category that your brain added to the word list because it makes sense, right? And so that's our first little exercise to see what we process and what we give people to process and what their brains do with that list is very different to somehow what we think as a rational activist. Here's the information, here are the statistics, it should make sense. Just a quick demonstration to wake us up in the morning to say, actually, there's a lot more going on than what we think. So When Brexit happened, I went and I built on my sort of social psychology experience, and I went to do a master's in cognitive neuroscience because I wanted to understand what the hell is going on in people's brains. Still unsure, by the way, and inconclusive. But the main thing that I really took away in some of my research was about how people process information about divided issues. So politics, same-sex marriage, veganism, a few different issues of people who are against the issue. How do they process the information about that? So that was quite interesting. The main thing, I'm going to show you basically 2 or 3 neuroscience slides, but the rest of it will be a little bit easier to consume. Cognitive science, kind of a bit more popular science. The brain processes about 50 times as much information as you realize that you're processing. So we're going to do a couple of activities just to emphasize this point. So however many things you know that you're doing, I saw this, I smelled that, I heard this, etc., there's about 50 times as many things going on all the time. You know, keeping you in balance, keeping you breathing, kind of something is thrown at you, you might catch it. You didn't actually plan to do that. It just kind of happens automatically. This is a very complicated slide explaining why that is. I'm not going to explain all of it, but basically, what you need to know here is that there are multiple pathways in the brain that do things at the same time. So when you're looking at something, there's a slower process that looks at, okay, what am I looking at? It's black, it's square, it has 4 legs, it's a table. That's kind of how a lot of machine learning vision works. So you kind of create a bigger thing from pieces of it. But there's actually a parallel process to that consumes information much faster and helps you make decisions. So that parallel process is basically, if a tiger in the forest is jumping at you, you need to jump out of the way before your brain has time to be, oh, there's a tiger, it's jumping at me, what should I do about this? And the thing here, and there's lots of citations, anyone big on citations, talk to me after. I'm not going to write all of them down, but basically, what you need to know from this is people decide what to do about something sometimes before they've even realized they've seen anything. And that applies in activism, that applies in fundraising, that applies in what you're doing. So as soon as someone's looked at your ad, as soon as someone looked at your banners on the street, as soon as someone looks at your website, a good chance that they have decided if they're going to take action on it before they've even registered. What's written there? What does the image say? All of that kind of stuff. And that is really important to know, because we think that what we write is important, and it is important. But actually realizing that there's a whole automatic process that happens even before people are like, oh, what are the stats? These stats are awful. I should do anything about it. Actually, people already, when they've started reading it, their brain's already decided if they're going to lean in or lean out. That's really important. And just to demonstrate this, I don't know how good you can see this. What's this? Hairdryer? What's this? Jill? It's the same pixels. They're exactly the same pixels added to 2 different images. And you know implicitly what those pixels are. The pixels didn't change, the context changed. Your brain has done a complicated piece of, here are some pixels, I don't know what they are. Let's fetch all kinds of context to do with, what is this? What do I know about this? What could help me make this decision? So all of this kind of stuff. I'm doing this to kind of jar you out of the other sessions in this conference, but all of these processes are happening in the background. So to actually take a step back, test everything, and realize what's going on. So one cheeky example from climate action, and then we're going to go into more practical examples. For years, for 20 years, 30 years, this was the poster girl, maybe, for climate change. Can someone tell me, using some of the neuroscience we just talked about, what does this tell you? What messages does this send your brain? Ice, thank you. Ice melting, you said. Interesting. What else?
It's having an impact on animals that are maybe helpless.
Great. Anybody else? Okay. It's a natural picture. It's a natural scene. There's a whole part of your brain that detects if something is natural or human-made. It affects an animal, doesn't affect people. There are no people in the picture. It's not about us. It's about an animal that no one's ever seen in reality. And it's cold. It's cold. So I use this a lot in quite a few sessions where I'm basically asking for everyone, in most movements actually, to not be the genius that decided to communicate global warming with a picture of ice. It's not smart. 20 years later, we started communicating things like this. We started calling it climate crisis. We started using images that show that there's a problem and that show that it's a much scarier problem and much closer by. So using pictures like this of polar bears, you can see. No text needs to be next to this. You can see that there is a problem. It looks wrong, it looks sick, it looks distorted. You can see fires, you can see pollution, you can see these things that implicitly tell you there's a problem. Whereas this, you have to explain the problem rationally next to the picture. The picture actually doesn't scream problem, problem, problem. And so, something to bear in mind where we design the next kind of generation of animal advocacy. Okay. So we're going to do a speed run through some factors, and these are going to be specifically tactical, so you can go and you can try these at home. So the first one we're going to talk about is anchoring. So here we have, I can share this deck if anybody wants it. You don't have to read all of it. Here we have two famous experiments. So people were asked to multiply 1 times 2 times 3 times 4, etc. And another group was asked to multiply 8 times 7 times 6 up to 1. The people who started at 1 had 1512 as their answer, their average answer. The people who started at 8, 2,250 as their average answer. The learning there is when you start with a big number, your brain will guess a much bigger number, basically. This works in lots of contexts. There was actually an activity that I was going to do with you, but we skipped that. There was one here, for example, and this was in the US. People said, okay, write your social security number. Write the last 2 digits of your social security number. So a random number, because you have a random distribution of that in the group. And then you had to bid for something randomly. They're like, well, how much would you bid for this? People who have a higher number at the end of their social security bid a much higher amount for this random experiment where all they were trying to assess was how does a number presented to you affect the next number we ask you to come up with. Isn't cognitive science fun? And so this is one of our clients. We use this a lot, mostly in fundraising, but you can use it in advocacy as well. So throughout this, I'm going to show you fundraising and advocacy together because it should be together. This is all part of a journey. You want people who are advocates to continue in terms of financial donations. It makes them more committed to the cause, but you also need to fund all this amazing advocacy. And so I'm going to be kind of weaving fundraising examples here, A, because there's more of them for cognitive science testing, but also because it's part of the same thing. So if you're here going, I'm an advocate, I don't do fundraising, please change your mindset. A quiz we have here. We have a lower amounts, that's 30, 75, 125. We have a higher amount, so 50, 75, 150. Which one do you think resulted in a higher average gift, average donation? Who thinks it's the left? Raise your hand. Okay. Who thinks it's the right? Lower amounts? Okay. You know your cognitive science already. Double the amount per session. Double the amount of every single person that landed on this page raised double what they thought. Just by not even changing the middle number, just by changing the bottom and the top in terms of donation. And so when I was doing this presentation, I looked at a few animal charities. I don't want to name and shame anyone. Lots of people are starting at £10. Don't do this. Up that amount. Nobody needs to. People can give whatever they want to give. It's up to them. But the amounts are so low sometimes. It's 10, 20, 30. It's too low. Please change it. Another example here is loss aversion, so how you frame things. So this is another famous experiment where you say if you use energy conservation methods, you will save $350 a year. If you use energy conservation methods, you will lose, if you don't use them, you will lose $350 a year. So this kind of framing is really, really helpful, especially in advocacy. So is it about how many, if you don't do this, how many animals will be affected? Or if you do this, how many animals will be removed from this environment, etc. I see a lot of, if you go vegan, this is the number of animals you can save. That's great. I've not really seen too much of the other, the kind of the loss aversion perspective, where if for every day you don't go vegan, this is the number of animals that thinking a bit like that, thinking about how to make it really tangible about the cost of inaction. Framing this campaign in terms of a loss, so this one, so if you don't do this, you will lose money every year, is much, much more effective than saying you could save money like this, you could do this. You're actually saying, if you don't, you're going to just lose money. So it's the same amount of money that you're saving, but framing it as a loss is much more effective, generally speaking. Okay, the next fancy term we're going to talk about is choice architecture. And choice architecture is the number of things you're presenting to a person and what order they're in, how many options there are. I'm going to ignore this, but here you can see an experiment from a commercial enterprise. So you have a digital subscription to this magazine, a print subscription to this magazine, and a print and digital subscription to this magazine. So in marketing, this is called a decoy. This thing in the middle is a decoy. It makes the right-hand option look much better value, right? As popcorn sellers in the cinema do this for you. Everybody ever buy the biggest popcorn in the cinema because all the other ones just seem wasteful? Even though you don't need this much popcorn. So when there's 3 options, 84% of people choose the one that obviously looks like it's much better value. If you take this decoy away, 32% of people chose this. And so just by the addition of that middle option, more than double the amount of people who go for that much higher amount. Another thing under choice architectures, there's quite a lot of stuff that we play around with. Center stage effect. So center stage effect basically means people like choosing the middle. The middle seems safe. You're not the lowest, you're not the highest, you're kind of in the middle. It seems like where most people choose, people want to follow most people. And here you have an example. So sometimes you want to use that, welcome. And sometimes you want to be really mindful that if you have 3, people choose the middle and maybe you don't want that. So here you have when there were 2 options, 80% of people chose this trick. And when there were 3 options, 80% of people choose the middle. And so they've introduced a lower option and that actually pushed many more people to the left. What they should have done here is added one to the right? Added a more expensive one. So what can you do? From an advocacy perspective, I actually don't see this used very often, but from a fundraising perspective, people have really nailed this as a science. What people can do is you can go and look at other websites, at other organizations. Donation pages are super useful for this because a lot of larger organizations test them all the time and see what works. And so, for example, you can see, this is the IRC. This is over a year ago, so they may have changed it a little bit. It defaults to monthly gift, not one-off gift, so that's cool. Highest donation first. Sorry, not this one is monthly. £91 a month, monthly donation. Decoy, anyone? It makes the middle one looks much cheaper, right? If you're asking for £91 a month, it makes £17 a month look much more reasonable and much more affordable. There's a lot of people who do high first, following anchoring. So UNICEF does the high numbers first, and then goes to the lower numbers. It hugely increased the average gift. So go look, basically. Go look at whoever you think is doing well, especially international development organizations. They have whole roles and whole technology stacks just for testing these kinds of things. So I'm going to do one that we did. And here we're going to ask, which donation page do you think won? And then we're going to get to a few more advocacy examples after this. So this one had 3 asks, 46, 75, 150. This one had 3 asks, but with decimal points on the first and last one. So 46, 88, and 150 and 50 pence. And this one, 4 asks, again with the decimal points. So 46.88, 75, 150, and then the addition of a 492.94. So who thinks it's A? The 3. Nice and clean. No one. You're suspicious now. Who thinks it's B? Yeah? Who thinks it's C? Okay. 75% improvement in the average gift that people gave. And that follows a few rules. So firstly, that kind of center stage effect, you've added one on the right. People move to the middle. The middle is now a higher average because there's a much higher decoy option on the right. And you also have the decimal point effect. So the decimal point effect is basically people hate decimal points. So people don't like choosing something that has decimal points. If there's an option to choose a round number, people choose a round number. And so you put the desirable numbers in the middle, you have decimal points on the ends. It moves people to the middle as opposed to the first option. So it basically moves the average from around here to around here. So some tricks of the trade. Yeah, go for it. Because people don't like decimal points, but they like even less that it's £2 and not £1.99, because £1.99 feels cheaper than £2. If that makes sense. So it's sometimes it feels more real, like a realer number. If you're showing a kind of weird, odd number with decimal points, you're like, oh, there must be a reason why it's that. Or if it's a really there's. Yeah, they'll be like, oh, there must be a reason why they're asking me to turn up at 8:57. There's interesting studies where they show like, oh, think of a random number. And almost nobody thinks of the like 40, 50, 60 out of 100. They're like, oh, that's not random. I can send you a whole YouTube video about how people process randomness, and people choose 37 and 73 as the most random of numbers within 100, but very consistently, like majority of people would choose either 73 or 37, just because it feels like it's a prime number. It doesn't divide by anything. It feels more random to our brain than like a 50. Nobody wants to say, oh, 50 is a random number. It doesn't feel random. It's really curious. Okay. A few more. How are we doing for time? We've got a little bit. We might not get to the end, but it's good conversation. Goal gradient effect. So goal gradient effect, this one, is a really great study that I love, which is in a coffee shop, they gave half the people a coffee card with 1 stamp and half the people a coffee card with 2 stamps. Very simple, very easy. Twice as many people completed when there were 2 stamps on their card as 1 stamp. So there's lots of things working here in their favor. So firstly, you feel a bit closer to completing it. So it's kind of, you want to complete it. 2, there's some sort of reciprocity here, right? Because, they were nice to me. They gave me 2 stamps. I'm going to come back here. These are my people. Something really interesting about this, I think, would be really easy to replicate in an animal context in some way, shape, or form. And we'll talk more about reciprocity in a minute. So I might skip this one, actually. But basically, if you're close to the goal, say how close you are to the goal. People love helping you get to the goal, complete the goal. It could be a daily, make it daily if you want. We need this many more banners to buy. We need this many more, this much more money today. This is an example of people saying we just need 10 more kits, to dispatch 10 more kits. For people, that increased conversion rate of this email by 90%. Okay, great. Well, the audience will tell me if they want more of this. Scarcity, so it's similar to scarcity and urgency. So this one from our client, Movember. So from Movember, there's a kind of a countdown. So we developed a countdown to say like 4 days to mow Movember, 2 days to mow, 1 day to mow, etc. It kind of builds the countdown to a particular event. So that could be a protest. That could be these variants. There were 6,000 variants in this campaign. These kind of very, very simple design-wise to be like just amp up the ante towards a particular date was the most effective. In terms of scarcity, you see this a lot. You see this a lot in a commercial environment. This is a rare find. 3 people are looking at this. You won't stay here for long. This many social proof. This many people have booked this apartment on Airbnb. This many people are looking at it right now. Book it, book it, book it, book it. Not seeing as many of the examples in the charity sector, but the commercial sectors like nail this cognitive science tricks to a T right now. And another one from a supermarket, scarcity and urgency. One of the supermarkets in America had a 10% sale on soup. One had, the default was no limit, and a consultant came in and said, you should put a limit on it. Only 12 per customer. Who buys 12 cans of soup in one go? Which one do you think won? The right? 7 cans of soup versus 3.5 cans of soup on average, if you put a limit on it. something in our minds going, what if tomorrow I'll need 20 cans of soup? What will I do if I need more soup that they'll let me buy? I have to buy more right now. 7 cans on average means that loads of people bought 12 and then some people bought 2, right? Like loads of people just ended up buying the maximum. Where are you saying we're going to this process and this committee only has 10 seats on it? Do you want to come and be part of this committee or this protest, right? There's a scarcity. There's a limited amount of numbers there. Do you want to be, tell us if you want to be one of them, and we're reserving that for you, right? You're making sure that person comes. Okay. Yes, absolutely. So with donation, for example, we do that a lot when there's a match. So the first 100 donations will be matched by a corporate donor or from a major donor. That's really common, very effective. When it's timeline, so if you do this by a particular date, there's 24 hours in a countdown, actually counting down to how much time you have until you do this. You have, especially in mid-value giving, high-value giving, you might say, okay, we have 10 seats on this kind of, we need 10 people to join this capital appeal, and we can only take 10 donations of 10 grand or 50 grand, 100 grand, etc. It's like an exclusive thing. Do you want to be a founder of this program and that kind of thing? Give it a name, give it a bit of exclusivity. It's very effective. Be like, once you've missed it, you missed it. You can never be a founding member of this thing once we've done it. Okay, we're meant to have an activity here, but we're gonna. Do you want an activity to ideate how you can use this for your own organization, or do you want a few more tricks and a few more? Yeah. I'm breaking my own rule, which is never give people more than 7 things to process at one time. Okay, identity. This is a fun one. Basically, giving an identity label. I think people do this very well in the movement, actually. So this is an example from Bumble. They did an experiment with Bumble. And they say, let your matches know you're a voter. And half the people got, let your matches know you're going to vote. So the verb versus the label, voter. And the one that said, let them know you're a voter, had much higher voting turnout. When they asked people after the election. This was in the US. And so something about the label when you're an animal protector, that's something you have to maintain. That's like an identity. That's not something you're doing at once. It's not an action that you're doing once. It's something you're going to do. It's who you are, right? And so if something is who you are, you're not going to break it or change it tomorrow. This was an experiment from the American Red Cross, where this is, again, donations. As I said, there's a lot of these examples in donations. Less in advocacy, we'd love to see more of them and more that we could share. Here they wanted to get donors to give again, and here they had a control. And on this one, this is a DM pack, a mail pack. They had previous gift and the date. So no specific label or no specific name for that. They just said, this is when you gave last time for people that gave again. Who thinks it's that? Who thinks it's a control without the date of last time? Date. You got this. 20% increase in donations just by adding the last time somebody gave to that charity. And more effective for repeat donors, so people who have given multiple times. They say, like, you were with us last time. Could you be with us again? Again, for donations, but also for like attending a protest or, signing a petition or sending something to KFC or whatever you're doing. Another test that they did next is priming local identity. So they sent to people, right now, people everywhere are banding together to support the American Red Cross. Not sure that's true. Right now, people throughout your city are banding together in a community drive to support the American Red Cross. You already know what's going on here, so I'm going to skip this. 38% response rate for just naming the name of the city. This is very common. We do this a lot whenever we can. If you have email, do it. If you have email but don't have the location of the people on your email list, you can actually get plugins that basically detect where the person is opening their email and then injecting the location of that place of the IP address into the top of the email or into the copy. Depends on how big your email is. But you can do that in a country, you can do that. There's a question there. Yeah, those plugins work with almost every inbox. They're external, so they're external code that then says, oh, this IP address, open this email, go fetch me something external. So tools that would you do this, Nifty Images is a cheap one that's quite good. Movable Ink is one. It's called Movable Ink because the email changes depending on who opened it. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. But you can also do it on the website. You can geolocate traffic coming from the website. So there's a lot of really fancy stuff that you can do on your digital team. A couple more as we go. So reciprocity is a really big one. And again, this one is ripe for using in the animal sector. The NHS started testing text reminders saying you have a hospital appointment booked and this appointment costs £75, please attend it. And it reduced non-attendance by a third. Even though if you're not from the UK, you don't pay that cost. It's just the guilt of costing the NHS that much money if you don't come. I think this is great, and I think there's something very, this kind of reciprocity is used a lot. So sometimes when people send packs, some mail packs, they said this was hand-delivered by a volunteer from our charity, for example. And you're like, oh, they did something for me. Somebody put labor into this. Somebody put effort into this. I should respond. I should do the same. If they could do this for me, or if this much is what the consequences of not doing it. I think for COVID, they did a similar thing. It was like, oh, we have a vial of vaccine reserved for you. Please let us know if you're not going to use it, because it's going to go to waste. Like, shit, it's reserved for me. And so think about it, if you want people to attend an event or to attend a protest or to do something where a lot of people drop out, this is coming up, this action is coming up, this campaign to this corporate organization is coming up, you said you will be with us, we've done this, and this, now we just need you to, email your MP or whatever it might be. So something about the effort that, without sounding too like a humble brag, we're like something about the consequences of not doing it and how many people have already done. Something reciprocal behavior, so show people you're in and they'll be in as well. And the last one here is social proof. So social proof, if you take one thing from this session, please take social proof away with you. This is a really famous experiment. Some people must know it. Basically, they did an experiment in hotel chains, and they said, please reuse your towels because it saves the environment. And then it says, most hotel guests reuse their towels. And a follow-up one that says, most hotel guests staying in this room reuse their towels. And the closer you are to you, as in people who stayed in this specific room, as if it matters. What does it matter which room they stayed in? But the fact that they said, people like you staying in this room reuse their towels, please reuse your towels, by far the most important. Not that it saves the environment. It doesn't actually say why. It just says that other people are doing it, right? And so there's something, especially in times of uncertainty, in times, right now, there's like financial crisis, cost of living crisis, there's conflict in the world. People are very prone to say, like, what are other people doing? There's safety in that. Like, what are other people doing right now? Okay, I'll do that. It's like, I don't have the mental capacity to calculate and do the cost benefit and just like the safety, and okay, the herd is going over there, okay, I follow them. It's just much more easy. And so there's a whole part of your decision making which is like, oh, people are going out, okay, I'll go out today. It's like you don't actually calculate whether you wanted to or not. This is an example from the NAACP. This is one of our clients. Again, this is really, really easy. Just adding this kind of little banner that says this many people donated, or this many people signed this petition so far. I'm not going to do this for time. Huge uplift in conversion, just the number of people that are already with us. This many people have already done it, join them, versus we have a problem, please help us solve it. It feels more empowering, like loads of people have already done it. People sometimes think that it would depress results, be like, oh, you already have this many donations, what do you need me for? But it actually cognitively has the opposite effect. Be like, you just want to be part of it. You want to be part of it. This is another version of social proof. So another famous experiment where people were trying to get households to save energy. And so they tried lots of things. They said to save energy, to save the environment, save energy to save money. And the only thing that helped was saying, how much do you use energy versus your neighbors? And if your neighbors are using less energy, you're like, shit, we're using more energy than our neighbors. More effective than anything about the environment, anything about how much money it's going to save you, nothing. If other people are doing it, okay, I guess we have to be doing it now. And in wider charities, especially in international development, you see a lot of things be like, most people give this amount when they're giving online. Most people sign 3 petitions. Most people do this next. Like the majority of people did this action after the first action. And it's very, very, very effective, as well as little scrollers that say this name of this person has just signed this petition, just made a donation. All these kinds of little things that you might see, they're hugely, hugely effective. There's a reason why you see more and more of these kinds of things. And my last here is like 3-word slogans. 3-word slogans really, really work. So a challenge for all of us who love detail and numbers and stats. I do not endorse half of these slogans, by the way, but they are really, really effective. There's a cognitive process that means they get kind of lodged in your brain, and it's easy to repeat, and it's easy to, you can almost hear it, right? You can hear these slogans being said again and again and again. So something about the simplicity, the 3, and the repetition of it. So you see like the Conservative government is very, very good at the kind of 3-word slogan, so much that there was like a 3-word slogan generator on The Guardian at some point when the COVID. So if anyone's not from the UK, this was the COVID government sign, and they kept changing the 3 words, but there were always 3 words on it. I think it was like face, hands, space, or something, hands, face, space, something like that. And so, I mean, yes, we can. Love must win. We talk about the Freedom to Marry Coalition, which we ran most of the marketing. Is like love must win. That was the slogan, and so it completely changed the discourse from kind of gay equality and gay marriage, and it's for somebody else versus a universal thing. Move That Bus. Anyone remembers Move That Bus? No? Too young? Move That Bus was from a show in America called Extreme Makeover Home Edition. But brands are using it. So I'm loving it. McDonald's, we don't like them, but it is really, really catchy. But you can also see, a lot of people use Be the Change, things like that. If you can come up with a good one, it's worth it. Okay, so our last slide here this is from our friend Peter USA. I just chosen them because I didn't think they're going to be in the room. What can we do to their website based on what we just said to improve this website a little bit? This is the top of their website. Shout any tricks.
When it says order your free vegan starter kit, did you change it to something referring to how other people download it?
Yeah, 27,000 people have already downloaded this month. I don't know what the numbers are, but yeah, whatever this many people have already done this, or this many people in California have already done this. If you can kind of geolocate their IP address, would definitely add that. Not just you download it. They're doing a good thing. So did you know that you could save nearly 200 animals per year just by going vegan? That's nice. But they definitely could add some social proof to it to say how many other people have already done it. That will probably help.
Did they also switch, how you were saying, every year you're not vegan?
You can test that. They could test it. They could say, you could do a little calculator that says, when do you think you'll go vegan? By age, how old are you now? When do you think you'll go vegan? And then let you slide the scale of when do you think I'll go vegan later. Okay, well, this is the number of animals that are affected by that, right? There was somebody here.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but also there's research that committing to something.
Yeah.
If just saying that you're going to do it makes you much more likely to do it. So that's type of thing as well.
Yep, absolutely. What else? There's that.
And have you donated? When was the last time you donated or something like that?
Yeah, you can definitely. You can use cookies or local storage to say hey, welcome back. We haven't seen you for a while. You donated this much last time. Maybe not as specific as that. It creeps people out. Yeah. But something like that when you can demonstrate that. But even this, it's good that they have it, but it could work harder. It could work a lot harder and just adding some of that. How many people are on the list? What is the benefit on the list? Why do you need people on the? How many more people do you need to get on your list to really make that change you want to do? Like all this kind of stuff.
I feel like focusing on food and lifestyle and stuff is kind of like the animal rights version of the polar bear on the iceberg, because their thing is we want to save the animals, and then they're talking about lifestyle, so people can't make that connection.
But I actually think that they've done that because they've tested it. Actually, talking about food is a much less aggressive way of doing it. People are more open to, oh, let's try food, than they are about, hey, we're really angry, join us. We're angry and upset. You can also be angry and upset.
Do you just very simply make the donation button bigger? Because it doesn't seem that I actually didn't spot the donation button for quite a while when I was...
Yeah, there's a big donation button. It is yellow, which is good. Yellow is one of the warning signs. So in nature, you have some animals that signal to you, stay away from me. Those are good warning signs. So yellow is one, it's okay. Orange and red, usually better. Often people test between like green and red, things like that. Red tends to be the go-to for most people. So if that button was red, for example, that would probably be better. A widget on the homepage with amounts that are higher would have been even better than that. Anybody else? Yeah, I mean, you could say, oh, you're coming from Texas. Maybe you also switch it to like, if not that many people from there, you know, we want 1,000 people in Texas to do this. Would you be one of them, right? You can kind of flip that if there's not a lot of people already doing it. You can't. Yeah, some counties get Taylor Swift, others don't. That's the rule. There was something here. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So there's a lot of testing about using free versus complementary. Complementary somehow wins because it's like, oh, it does cost money, but you're giving it to me. Complementary is in free, it suggests that it's lower value, if that makes sense. Often you will see on commercial sites, they say like, this is worth $99, but it scratched that, and then today it's free, that kind of thing. So you actually calling out the value of what you're receiving, and it works a lot better than just saying it's free, have it. Or like today, you know, by the end of the week, this week it's free. After that, it's gonna be $50 or whatever it might be. Like, oh, I should get it now. So all of these kinds of, you know, lots. This is just an example. It's like so many things that you could test and like trial on just this one page on this one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any research if there's like be a donator rather than donate now, so that identity rather than action.
A lot of people have done that more. It depends on the country as well. Like some countries that kind of identity label works better, but it will probably work better and be like, be an animal protector, donate today or something like that. So it's a little softer, a little nicer, but also kind of like a join us, you know, join the movement today or join the fight for animal equality, that kind of thing. We're seeing that more and more. Again, if you're from a really, really small organization, it's really helpful to see what bigger US organizations are doing, because they usually have a bit more money to test some of these things. And we're seeing more of the messages go like, we're about this, join us. Like, this is the future we want, join us a bit. People talked about that a little bit today. Dan?
This is amazing, by the way, like it's amazing. If you're, so we do street mobilization and we're also doing donation stuff. And so I've often wondered, like, if you say like join the movement, is that like taking people away from the street mobilization, and kind of how do can you use the same thing for all of it, or is there ways to kind of use stronger or lesser kind of asks?
Yeah, it's a great
trainings?
question. I think you test it. Ideally, you would test it to see if the same thing works across different channels, different moments that you're engaging people. When people get big enough, you do tend to see a bit more consistency, if that makes sense. When they call you, they're asking you for similar, maybe a different amount or something like that. But the message of like, what are we doing here? What are we about? Tend to be a little more consistent than that. But yeah, thinking about how can, we didn't talk about it, but there's kind of two ways for incremental commitment. One is called foot in the door. Would you give us your email address? And then we ask you for a bigger commitment. The other one we don't see enough, especially in the animal sector, is called door in the face, which is like, we have 10 puppies. Would you take them? And we're like, no. We're like, okay, would you sign this petition? All right. So you're asking for a higher barrier thing, knowing that probably the answer is going to be no. And then the lower barrier thing seems, oh, of course I'll do that. I've already said no to you once. I have to do this next thing. So things like that, thinking about, there's, I think there was a famous experiment that said, oh, would you take an orphan to the cinema for a day? And we're like, no. Okay, would you give $30 for somebody else to take them? That sounds really reasonable. Then if you didn't do that first step and just ask for that donation from in the middle of nowhere. Go ahead.
So some of these things that you discussed, I noticed when I'm online browsing, shopping, or on social media, people trying to sell me stuff, and sometimes it's not always done well, and sometimes it is done well, but I still know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I tend to not care what other people do anyway, but sometimes I might, but I still know what they're doing, so I just ignore the sales tactic. But is there any research showing, maybe like me or like other people, if they know what that is, or what the website or the company is doing, they're likely to dismiss it, or like something clicks like, oh, I see what you're doing, screw you, type of thing?
People think that they're like smarter than this, but like I showed you with some of the, how many of you thought about sleep in the first activity, right? Like some of these things are automatic, so you do see advertising, you see the repetition, it just makes you think of it implicitly. You don't know why you're thinking about it. So for a very tiny minority of the population, yeah, they might be like, McDonald's doing this, I hate McDonald's, which I think most people in the room, but it has to be something, a higher cognitive process of like, I hate them because they're doing this, so I'm not responding to the advertising, versus I'm just somehow above human cognition processes. Yeah.
I think we have room for one more question.
One more question?
I think.
I didn't answer your question.
Oh, okay.
Considering we don't have free will, why aren't there laws to protect us? I mean, it'd be great to use this for animals, but 99% of it's used against us for buying stuff. Yeah.
So your question is, why can commercial advertisers use this to manipulate us?
Correct.
Some of it I think will come. So, but yeah, it's a really good question. I haven't seen any legislation. There's legislation against highly targeted advertising that gets the kind of tailored, personalized content to an extreme. So for example, Meta is pulling a lot of targeting criteria, and Google is pulling some of the targeting criteria. One example is it's just been Ramadan. And so historically you could say, oh, is a person, what's their religion and are they kind of doing Ramadan? And so you can talk to them about your work, you can talk about giving zakat to an organization, all this kind of stuff. You can't do that anymore because all of those targeting criteria got pulled. I think that's right. I think it is right that people have less highly super targeted for specific sensitive criteria. But they did leave like interest in Ramadan. We're like, well, okay, fine. Weird, but okay, next year they'll probably remove, over time people are removing more and more. I will say the vegan and vegetarian isn't targeting criteria, and I will also say that if international development organizations target vegans and vegetarians, their response rates are higher than just the general population. We're just nice people. We respond to things. And so thinking about it, I agree with you. It's a power that can be used for good or for evil. We're here to use it for good. So thank you for the question.
There's
two online, but I'll read. I think we only have time for one. How does tribalism comes into play with these ideas? So, for example, whether you're Republican or Democrat, or in Scotland, if you support Rangers and Celtic, does it work to put certain groups or ideas against each other?
Yeah, that's a really interesting, very rich question. I'm going to try and do it justice very quickly. So tribalism, how does kind of in-group, out-group dynamic work in this? We didn't really touch on that. Yes, if you're in an organization that has an enemy, it's hugely, hugely effective. So in the US, in politics, hugely, it's very much like, we have to do this now or they'll win, that kind of thing. The interesting thing here is that, having an enemy works very well, but also has this kind of polarizing effects on society. We need to be very careful and very wise about using that. There's some in-groups are formed by a difference from an out-group. So you want to distance yourself from an out-group, and there's a lot of research that shows you can kind of create in-group, out-group dynamics for anything. There's like social psychology experiments where they're like, you're the blue team, you're the red team. It's completely random, and by the end of the hour, they hate each other. So it's really, it can be very effective, but I think that this sector is trying to move a little bit away from that because its impact on society, basically. So especially for veganism, it's much less, join us because you hate meat eaters. Like, actually, join us because this is the future we all want together as a society. It's going to be more effective in the long run, even though the short term, getting someone angry about something else is effective, but you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot for the long term strategy. One more? Is there? Do you have one more?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, last question.
Oh, it was just follow on from that one, but slightly a tangent. Are any of the I presume that all the phenomena you've discussed have a moderation effect by other phenomena. For example, a certain genders or a conservative is more likely to pick the number in the middle than a liberal. Things like that. Are there some known phenomena that have moderation effects?
I think there are some of them less tested, like less evidence. But for example, if you're in a collectivist society, if you're in Japan, I would guesstimate that you would go for the middle. You would go for the group average. Like, what is the group doing? And I'm the strength is in the group. Whereas in a more individualistic society, you're like, that's what everybody else is doing. I'm gonna do more. That's what people are giving. I have to give more because I have to be better than other people, like the competitiveness. There's no research on this as far as I know, but I'll be very interested to see the research. But test it. Depends on what countries you work in. The one thing that really affects if you're likely to do it is how many people you know that are doing it, generally speaking, across the world. So solar panels, who's getting solar panels? You can see it in satellite images. It's like neighbors. Do you know someone that got it? It's not the environmental thing and the bonuses and all this kind of stuff. Your neighbor just got one. Oh, tell me about it. Okay, I guess people are doing this now. I'm going to do it. Same for veganism. I think the number of vegans you know is a big predictor to how likely you are to go vegan. If you know nobody, it's much less likely in rural areas. If you know loads of your friends and family and uni mates and things like that, suddenly going vegan, you're like, oh, people are doing it. Maybe I'll try it as well. These are my details. Please get in touch if you want the presentation. If you're doing something really interesting in animal advocacy and you want a bit of just sense check of your campaigns, get in touch.
Okay.